everyone, it's Ali. Thanks so much for joining me today for episode 3 in my Christmas card series 2021. Today I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do a faux tile technique. It does take a little bit of time, but I think it's really effective. Let's get working on these cards. For the first card in this video, I'm going to be using this stamp from Woodware. This is the Snow Flurries background stamp, and it's a really cool distress style background stamp with loads of snowflakes. I'm going to put a piece of white cardstock into my stamp positioning tool and put my stamp in there. I'm going to stamp this using 2 Nuvo hybrid inks in Borrowed Light and Marble Statue. I'm starting with Marble Statue, which is like a really pale grey. I'm just applying that all over the stamp and stamping it down on my cardstock. I'm using my stamping pressure tool here that my friend Gareth made me. I use this on all my videos. And because this ink is really light, I'm just going to stamp this a few times to get a really good impression. I could have used a darker grey ink, but I'd already started with this one, so you know, we make it work. Then I'm going to use the blue ink, and I'm just going to kind of roughly apply this to the snowflakes to give the image like a little bit of variation and a bit more interest. So again, I'm going to do that a couple of times to make sure I get a really good impression. Layering up different colours of inks is something I really like to do, especially on background images like this. It's a technique that I quite often forget to use, but I think the effects of it are really fun. Especially if you use something like a hybrid or a dye ink, the colours tend to like meld together really nicely. And that's our finished background. You can see that's got a lot of interest. So now I'm going to trim this down. I'm going to trim off the white edges, and then I'm going to cut the panel into even pieces, which is these are going to be our tiles. I'm just going to cut this one into 6. You can cut into as many or as few pieces as you like. I just thought this would be a nice amount and not too much to faff around with. They should all be the same size. I mean, again, you could have them different sizes if you wanted to. There's no reason you have to have squares, but I just decided that I wanted to do squares this time. So then I've got my 6 pieces there. And just to give them a little bit more dimension underneath all the heat embossing, I'm going to do some ink blending on the edge of these pieces. This is going to make them look a little bit more 3D. So I'm using the Nuvo hybrid ink in Marble Statue again, and a blending tool, and I'm just kind of rubbing that on the edges of each tile piece. This does take a little bit of time, but I think it is worth it just to give them that little bit more of a 3D look, and they look a little bit more grungy. So you can skip this step if you want to, it's completely optional. Now I'm going to heat emboss them. So I'm going to make myself a little handle with a scrap piece of cardstock and some repositionable adhesive. This way I can do 3 of the tiles at once, and I don't have to hold on to the hot sticky embossing powder, which is always dangerous. And then I'm going to use Wow clear embossing powder and Versamark ink to coat each of these in multiple layers of clear embossing powder. And this is going to build up and create sort of that tile effect we're going for, which is going to be higher in the middle. You can also use ultra high clear embossing powder, but I didn't actually have any, so I just used the regular clear embossing powder. You're not going to get as high a embossed tile effect if you just use regular embossing powder, but you do still get that sort of shiny, smooth tile effect. So it depends what you're looking for, and it depends what you have in your stash. I didn't want to just go and buy a whole new supply, try this technique out, because I wasn't sure if I was going to like the effect. And it's probably one of the only times I would use ultra high embossing powder, because I usually use it for sentiments or things with finer detail. So I didn't think it was something I'd get a lot of use out in my stash. So I thought the clear one will do just fine. So I'm just adding multiple layers of this, again, more Versamark ink, more clear embossing powder, and then heat setting it. And this does take a little bit of time, but it's a nice thing. You don't really have to think about it. You can just keep going, adding more layers, heat setting it, and I think the effect is really fun. The more layers you add, the more difficult it will be to see the pattern underneath, unless maybe you've got like really clear embossing powder. But the last layer I'm going to do is a clear sparkle layer. So this is another embossing powder from Wow, and it's just got glitter embedded in the embossing powder, and this is going to make the tiles all glittery as you might expect. So this one also, it makes it more difficult to see the pattern underneath, but I think the glitter is just really nice and festive and Christmassy, and I thought it was the perfect way to step this up a little bit. So these are all finished now. You can see the glitter in there, they look gorgeous, and I'm really excited to pop this on a card. I'm just going to show you one other way you can do this if you don't want to do all the stamping. I'm actually going to use pattern paper, and the The process is exactly the same. I've added more ink blending around the edge to give them that little vintage feel, and then I'm going to add Versamark ink, add the clear embossing powder, and add multiple layers of this, and you essentially get the same effect. So this is a really cool way to use up pattern paper as well. I've done bigger pieces with this pattern because I thought it needed a larger piece to get the full effect of the pattern. This is especially good to use up those kind of retro Christmas pattern papers. I think this is a really good effect. Didn't do quite as many layers on this one just because I did get a little bit bored, but you still get the same effect of the tiles. So that's all of our tiles done. Let's make these into some cards. I'm going to use this Card Making Magic Christmas sentiment stamp set. I used this last year. It's a really nice stamp set and it's got loads of different sentiments in. And then I'm just going to assemble these with lots of layers. So I'm going to add my sentiment in the middle there that I've stamped in grey ink. And then I've got some pearlized blue cardstock here that I'm going to use as a mat for all my tiles. Make sure that you put a decent amount of adhesive on these tiles because of the amount of embossing powder. They do have a tendency to warp a little bit. So I just use my ATG gun to add lots of adhesive to the back, and then I could layer them up on the mats. So the first mat is going to be this really nice blue pearlized cardstock that brings out the snowflakes that are blue, and then I'm going to add that to some white glitter cardstock to bring out the glitter in the tiles, and then I'm going to add a little bit of grey just to bring the sentiments in, and then I'm going to layer it onto a white 5x7 card. So this is a lot of mats. I don't usually do this many mats and layers on my cards, but I thought this card needed it. And just to finish it off, I'm going to use these little snowflake embellishments that I got from AliExpress. You might have seen in one of my previous AliExpress hauls, and I just remembered I had these, so I pulled them out because I thought they went perfectly with this card. I'm just going to attach those with a little bit of tacky glue, and that's that card finished. It's got so much glitter and shine, and I think it's just so nice for Christmas. Something a little bit different. Our other card is essentially going to be the same kind of deal, but we're going to do this on a white 6x6 card. So first I'm going to layer my tiles onto some teal cardstock. That is just a square that is slightly larger than all the tiles put together. So we've got that nice sort of grout almost in between. I know grout is normally white, but there's no reason you have to have white grout. I mean, in my kitchen, I've got black grout and beige grout, so there's no white grout at all. So there's no reason you couldn't have teal or, you know, sage green or something. So that's why I went for some different colours on this one. And then again, I've popped my sentiment there in the middle and added it all to a white 6x6 card. I'm just going to use some teal pearls on this one, again from AliExpress, that I've not used in my stash. And that's our cards all done for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new from my tutorial. Please stick around and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one, and check out my Christmas card making playlist if you'd like to see more Christmas videos. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you back here on my channel again soon. Bye!